Hello folks, welcome to Men and Motors. Today I'm here with the Seat Ateca. This is the 1.5 turbo petrol version and it's in SE technology trim. Now this starts at about 33 grand. The one I've got here today is 34 because it's got an option or two on it. That gets you 110 PS of power. It's got the DSG automatic gearbox in this one. MPG's around about 39 to 42. And really, it gives you all the performance you need for this kind of car. You can also get a 1 litre petrol 3-cylinder version. I'd probably go for this one. It's got 4 cylinders. It does also have some technology in that can basically deactivate 2 of those cylinders when it doesn't need them. So when you're cruising on the motorway at 70, for example, it'll switch off a couple of the cylinders, thus saving you a few reddies on your fuel bill. Now the Ateca was launched in 2016 and it's the sister car, if you like, of the Skoda Karoq. There are certainly funkier looking cars around. I mean, the main rivals for this car, apart from the Karoq, will be things like the Kia Sportage, the Nissan Qashqai, all similar kind of money as well. And there's certainly more interesting designs on one hand. However, you can say sometimes those more interesting designs don't date as well. This might not be the most exciting car to look at in its class, but I sort of somehow feel like it's going to grow old a bit more gracefully than one or two of the others, perhaps. By the way, although this is similar money to the Qashqai and the Sportage, it's 3 grand less than the Peugeot 3008. So onto the interior, and I think you'd call it sort of a classic and familiar design. Certainly if you've been in a VW Group car in the last 10 years, this will all be very familiar to you. But don't necessarily think I'm saying something negative there. I feel like this is a case of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There are certainly more interesting looking interiors, certainly funkier interiors in some of the car's rivals, but in terms of functionality and ergonomics, everything's pretty good. We don't have any silly haptics on the steering wheel. We've got physical dials, physical buttons. The steering wheel's lovely. VW Group, if you want to know how to do your steering wheels in future, do them like you used to. This works brilliantly well, as good as anything on the market at the moment. No need for any haptic controls. The infotainment system has touch controls on it, but you can obviously control volume and things over here with a proper dial if you so wish. On this SE technology model, it's a 9.2 inch touchscreen, really nice crisp resolution, nice and bright, really good colours. Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, the Apple CarPlay being completely wireless. It does take a little while to connect to the car when you first get in, maybe 10 seconds or something. First world problems, I know, but you know, I'm here to pick faults in these things, I guess. But yeah, it's a joy to live with, really. No issues with it whatsoever. Physical buttons and dials again for your air conditioning. Why wouldn't you? It works. Over here, we've got a really nice, bright, vivid colour digital display. Really great, actually, that. It's not the full virtual cockpit that you can get in some of the higher level trims, but when you might have seen that in Audis and various other VW Group cars. However, I don't think you really need it. This is so good and the information on it is all relevant. I don't think you need to mess about with it too much. And because the infotainment system is just there facing towards you as the driver, just ever so slightly, I don't think you need to go up that trim level. I think this spec works perfectly well and it would do for most people. The seats are very comfortable in this. They are cloth, apart from a couple of tiny little bits of leather trim. There is a lower lumbar support, although I've had far better in other cars, I have to say. But yeah, they suit the car well. They're not sports bucket seats or anything. They're really nice and comfortable, but you're not sort of sliding around in them as you're going up and down the road. Some of the plastics in here are not the best. You've got some really hard, sort of slightly cheaper feeling stuff down here, slightly squidgier up here. That's not really a problem in everyday usage. You just have to wonder how they might wear over time. To be honest, I think they'll be absolutely fine, but it's not the plushest or fanciest interior. What it is reasonably utilitarian, but very, very easy to sit in, use everything and not be distracted by having to go through your infotainment screen for basic functions or having to try and work out how to use this slidey thing to make it warmer, colder, or turn the volume down on the radio. It's good, very, very good. In the back of the car, it's a very similar story to the front, really. It's not very exciting, not very imaginative perhaps, but very comfortable, very practical, and I don't think you're going to have any problems with it. Got two USB-Cs down there so people in the back can charge their devices, electric window controls, not too much else. You've got a seat back pocket there, and we've got an armrest that comes down with cup holders and a through load space, which is always nice to have. Plenty of headroom. I'm about 5'9" and a bit, maybe 5'10" on a good day, and plenty of headroom for me. Driver's seat's in my normal position, and there's acres of leg room there, and a reasonable amount of space to put your feet as well. Really quite a nice place for your rear seat passengers. The boot space is really good in this car, very competitive. It's not a flat floor, there is a big duck down, but I like that because it means your shopping doesn't fall out as soon as you open the boot on a slope. It's really nice and deep. There's also some underfloor storage there where spare wheels used to live back in the bygone era. Nice, big, easy space to get things in and out. You've got controls there so you can easily drop down the rear seats from here. Not anything particularly clever or special once again, but very, very easy to use. Nice space. Once you get out on the open roads, you'll find this thing really quite a nice drive. The DSG automatic gearbox for the most part pairs up really nicely with this little 1.5 litre engine, and it gives you a smooth, consistent ride. You can find it a tiny bit slow on the uptake at times though. For example, if you're sitting at a roundabout and you need to sort of nip out a bit quickly, or perhaps you're coming to a stop and then sort of take off again, it can occasionally just take a second to decide what it's going to do. But otherwise, I think the DSG automatic is one of the best ones out there for actual driving feel. It doesn't feel sort of numb, it doesn't take away from the driving experience too much as some automatics can. Despite us only having 110 PS of power on tap, the car can get up and go when it needs to. 0 to 62 is 9 seconds, which is obviously nothing spectacular, but I think it's more than reasonable on a car like this. And you don't ever feel like you're lacking for power, even with 4 adults in the car. Now, I drove a Karoq recently, which is obviously the sister to this car, and I feel like the suspension's maybe a tiny bit firmer in this, but by no means is it harsh. And I think the real benefit from that is that actually it corners really nicely. It's not boaty at all. The car feels planted at all times. And I might be being overly harsh, to be honest. It may have been a slight difference between the two cars, maybe different wheel size or something, but this is perhaps just a hair firmer than you would get in the Karoq, and perhaps also you could say the same thing for the Qashqai, which is perhaps a tiny bit more cosseting on the old cheeks than this is. But don't let that sort of distract you from the fact that this is generally a very comfortable car to get down the road in, and I'd say it's a bit better in the corners than a Qashqai. You might be listening to me babble on about this car thinking this is all sweetness and light, there's nothing wrong with this car. Really, that's the story of it. There's nothing wrong with it. I couldn't put my finger on anything with this car really and say that's a negative. When I do talk about things that perhaps are not quite as good as something else, I'm literally trying to find fault, because the car doesn't present you with any obvious faults whatsoever. It's a nice thing to drive. It's got plenty of room for your family and your luggage, which I would say most people buying this kind of car are doing it because they've got a family and possibly some luggage. And it's just nice and easy. Everything about it is easy. Yet you don't have the compromise of it being really boaty in the corners and feeling like it's going to take 15 minutes to get up to 60. You know, it's a car without too many compromises. However, it's not very exciting. That's its biggest fault, is it's not very exciting. But if you like your motoring to be functional and reliable and solid, then I think this car's got a lot going for it. It really has. as an all-round package, if you could live with the perhaps slightly dull looks, I think this is a better car than the Nissan Qashqai. Where it does have a bit more sort of stiff competition is with the Kia Sportage, because that's a great all-round package as well, and does have sort of the added little bit of flair here and there that perhaps this one lacks. But I think they're just a really, really good car that I'm struggling to find anything negative to say about. This will also be a great used buy, and obviously there are plenty of these on the road, plenty of them on the open market right now. And I think if you're looking at a used one, perhaps that 1.5 turbo is the sweet spot yet again. You'll also find diesels out there in the market, but for many people that do mostly short runs, I would say you should probably avoid a modern diesel at all costs and look towards petrol only or petrol hybrid cars moving forwards. However, folks, the Ateca doesn't need to be all sensible, because the good folks over at Cupra will happily furnish you with a new Ateca with 300 brake horsepower, if that's something you desire. It's all a little bit livelier, a little bit more interesting, and the performance is absolutely breathtaking. You're looking at a Golf R engine in that thing, so yeah, it is definitely a fly by the seat of your pants experience. I think Seat's sometimes like the forgotten sibling of the VW Audi group, and I think that's really, really unfair. You know, over the years they tend to have had the last generation equipment sometimes, so like your infotainment system might not be the most up-to-date version, the steering wheel might not be the most up-to-date version, but when you compare that to some of the things we've seen in recent VW Audi group cars, particularly with the VW badge on, that's a really, really good thing. We don't have some of the annoyances that have appeared in the interiors of those cars in recent years, and this is all the better for it. I know I mentioned it earlier, but as an example, I would take this steering wheel over the steering wheel in any current Volkswagen car. It's not broke. We don't need it to be fixed. So if you're in the market for a mid-size family SUV, you should absolutely go and test drive a Seat Ateca. And if I were going to test drive a Seat Ateca, I'd ask for this. I'd ask for SE technology trim with the 1.5 turbo petrol, and I don't mind the DSG at all. Folks, if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to Men and Motors if you haven't already done so, and please share this video on your social medias. Now, if you want to see more of this, go and check out my good mate Tom Shorrock. He's been driving something very special. Click it. Go on.